Released in July of this year, Madonna revisits the album-defining genres of dance music, electronica, and synthesizers from her album's music and Confessions on a Dance Floor, with a sequel to the latter, Confessions 2. Spanning 16 tracks and exploring themes of liberation, romance, intimacy, freedom, spiritual searching, vulnerability, past experience, and escapism, Confessions 2 embraces the themes of her earlier albums, especially Confessions 1, but with the added perspective of years of personal and professional experience. Instrumentally, the album retains the familiar sounds of Confessions 1, though I find it to be much closer to her album music. Even with that, there are elements in this album that remind me of Ray of Light, particularly in songs like One Step Away and Everything. Another noticeable aspect of the instrumentation and production is its seamless flow from song to song, much like Confessions 1, eliminating breaks between tracks and unfolding as one continuous story. Vocally, Madonna sounds very good, granted, because the album harkens back to her early 2000s work. There's a great deal of auto-tune and vocal processing throughout much of the album, which can make it difficult to hear her natural voice, but even so, her voice remains strong enough to carry the album. Now, as for my feelings on the album, they are mixed. I love her 80s albums, some of her 90s work, but especially Ray of Light, and into the 2000s with albums like Music and the first Confessions album. But I have not cared much for her music since the original Confessions, ironically enough. So this was essentially a blind buy, as I did not follow any of the press coverage, hype, or build-up. The only thing I knew going in was that she's saying Bring Your Love with Sabrina Carpenter, which I'll get into later. After my first listen, I actually hated the album. But after several more listens, that reaction has faded, and my final thoughts are that I like it, though I do not consider it great or especially memorable. Instrumentally, there is a significant void in identity across much of the album. Yes, things do change, but compared with its predecessor, the shifts are far less pronounced. With Confessions 1, the production and electronica and dance pop elements never came at the expense of each song's identity. With that album, I knew exactly what each song was because, again, even with the seamless transitions, the instrumentation and vocals changed in ways that were much more noticeable. I could easily point to a track on that album and say, oh, that's Hung Up, that's Jump, that's Sorry, that's I Love New York. Because again, each had its own sound and style. With Confessions 2, many of the tracks sound monotonous and blend into one another, and I often only notice a shift when she changes pitch, for example. My final point is that I question whether this album needed to exist at all. I feel she has already expressed these thoughts and emotions more effectively on earlier albums, and compared with its predecessor, Confessions 1, this feels like day 2 leftovers. We have already explored these ideas and musical styles, so I wonder why this needs to exist, aside from the cynical and pessimistic part of my brain pointing to some obvious reasons. Really, when I listen to or think about this album, there are 2 things that come to mind. Her last critically acclaimed album, and Sabrina Carpenter. Now, this is no slight against Sabrina, but I never believed for a second that she and Madonna became friends and sang each other's songs on stage purely for the sake of it. I saw it and still see it as, okay, Sabrina is the hottest pop icon on the market. What if we had her work with Madonna, bringing together older and newer generational pop and sex icons while rehashing a sequel to the last Madonna album that people really cared about. Combine them and we'll make a ton of money and publicity. Fundamentally, I find this album to be more of a monetary transaction for attention than a work from the heart. Then again, maybe that is the DNA of the pop industry. So overall, is this album terrible? No, but I do not consider it great either. It's a fine album with some great moments, but honestly, this album works more as a reminder of how effective her records, music, and Confessions on a Dance Floor already were than as a fully satisfying sequel.